We are going live. We should be live now. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. And this is a real treat. You get the two Jonathans 2 days in a row. Remarkable.
Well, what's not to want? Welcome to my crew as well. Hello, team on the ATPGEO Politics co-stream side of things. We are going to be talking, I presume, Jonathan, about very similar topics as to what we were talking about yesterday, because 24 hours is a long time at the moment, it seems, in international politics, in domestic politics, both in the US and every country we're living in. Just things are moving at breakneck speed, and actually concerning
speed. But there's an extraordinary sense of deja vu at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And well, I don't know. Okay, to start things off, Jonathan, I'm going to say I'm exceptionally angry again. Partly because it's a deja vu situation. As we talked about yesterday, this 28-point peace plan is a regression to Putin's maximalist demands. And it's as if the United States has learnt nothing. But then there is some news just coming out via Reuters, and I don't know if you wanted to share that screen.
Yes,
this
is the screen.
Just compounding my anger almost infinitely here. So we hear that the US has threatened to cut intelligence and weapons to press Ukraine into a peace deal, according to sources. So take it with a pinch of salt. But the US has threatened to cut intelligence sharing and weapons supplies for Ukraine to press it into agreeing to the framework of a US brokered peace deal. Two people familiar with the matter said the sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, said that Kyiv was under greater pressure from Washington than during any previous peace discussions, and the US wanted Ukraine to sign a framework of the deal by next Thursday. Quote, they want to stop the war and want Ukraine to pay the price, one of the sources said. Washington has presented Ukraine with that 28-point peace plan, so on and so forth. So it's only a very short article, and there's a bit more to end it there. But the key there is, if you believe these people, and you can come back to full screen now, but if you believe those people, the sources in the Reuters article, huge problems for Ukraine.
But that very phrase, they want Ukraine to pay the price. Pay the price what? For being the victim? That seems to be...
It is absolutely beyond the pale. And so the frustration I have, like I said before, is a regression to previous situations that we've already been in. That's a deja vu you're talking about.
Yeah, that intelligence was shut off before. We tend to cycle around with Trump being hostile to Ukraine. Things happen. He realizes he can't drag Putin to the trough and get him to feed. And then through massive European pressure, Trump starts to become, I don't call it amenable to Ukraine. I mean, many commentators flip into this like, oh, Trump likes Ukraine now. Trump's never given a shit about Ukraine or Ukrainians. I don't think he gives a monkey's about peace as a value in itself, but as a means to an end, and a means to enrich him, a means to get deals, a means to get a gold bauble from the Nobel Committee. These are all means to an end. Ukraine is a tool for him to get what he wants, but there are points where he's come to see Ukraine as a useful tool, useful when finally people get through to him and say, do you know what? Ukraine is not losing in the way that Russia wants you to believe. Ukraine is not weak in the way that Russia wants you to believe, and Russia doesn't have anything to give you, and snap him out of that delusion. But he always reverts back, and I think people say Trump listens to whoever he last spoke to. The trouble is he has a default setting. There is a default setting which he'll snap back into, and that is presuming that Russian victory is inevitable. Russia is strong. Russia is powerful. Russia has shiny things that might be useful for his magpie brain. None of that's true, of course.
Yeah, nothing to disagree with there. What is worrying is, as according to that article, and the intuition I have in me, is that this is the United States being harder on Ukraine than they've been previously. Like, I think the pressure is going to be immense. Now, there are a couple of things to note here. One, I think this is to do with the Epstein files largely. Again, we talked about this yesterday, but there is this idea that he wants, I mean, he keeps talking about having solved 8 wars, and this is the difficult one, but I think he really wants that. He really wants it for the Nobel Peace Prize and all that kind of self-aggrandizing nonsense he bangs on about all the time. But actually, he needs it for a distraction. He needs to say to his domestic population that look what I've done, look how good I am. I have solved this intractable mess, and I'm showing myself to be this great leader that I keep claiming I am. And by the way, you know, nothing. Yeah, if everyone can forget the Epstein files, that'd be nice. I think there's so much pressure concerning the Epstein files on Donald Trump at the moment that I think that's probably partly what, at least partly, possibly largely what's underwriting this move by the Americans.
And I think he probably realizes that this is not enough. Ukraine and the coercive pressure and the theater. And let's face it, this is a sort of media circus, a media theater. And in fact, we'll come to Russia in a minute, because what's come out pretty much even since we were talking, it's quite clear that Russia is mounting a massive informational operation. They're not talking about this domestically. This is kind of interesting. Listening to various commentators, including Mark Galeotti this morning, there's not much play being made of this in internal Russian media or papers, but there is apparently a sort of fairly substantial investment in trying to control and seed the narrative. We're now fairly certain that it was Kirill Dmitriev who injected an early draft, or a first draft, as it were, or a very filleted draft of this peace agreement, as it were, the 28 points, a very Kremlin-friendly one with any concession to Ukraine taken out. That was injected into the media sphere yesterday, and that's what we were discussing. After we came off air, then the fuller version was actually published. I think it was realized in the US that actually they'd lost the initiative on that narrative, and the Russians had managed to inject their version in. But it seems to me there's a massive informational operation being mounted. Why would Russia do it now? It's clear, as you say, why Trump would do it now. Why would Russia do it at this point? I think there's two key points here. One is they feel that there's weakness in Kiev. They feel because of, as you say, the inflection point in the US and what Trump's dealing with and his mounting weakness, and Epstein, it's the right moment to put pressure on him. But they also feel that Kiev is in a historically weak position. They don't really understand how Ukrainian democracy works. They assume that if the government totters and is weak, therefore the country will collapse. Well, I'm sorry, I got news for the Russians. That ain't going to happen. And the guy at the top may even go at some point, or certainly his second in command may go. The government might even totter, might collapse and have to be reformed. Will that stop Ukrainians fighting and organizing? It won't. But Russia doesn't understand that, because that's a concept that is beyond their view of the world. The other reason they're doing this is that the oil price, the price for Russian crude, has now dropped, I would say, well below the production and distribution cost. They are losing money on every barrel. The gap between Brent crude and Urals crude was about sort of $12 previously. Not great for Russia, but it was well above their production distribution cost. And when you factor in the risk of losing ships and all the rest of it, now it has dropped, we believe, below any form of profitability, probably going into negative profitability. That will be setting alarm bells. So I think there's this double pressure now to get something done.
The Lukoil and Rosneft sanctions kick in today, November the 21st.
Yes.
That's huge. And there's interesting addition to that. There's a shadow tanker on fire off Vladivostok at the moment. So, but I want to, well, I said there's a few things to consider. The second one was actually, I was going to say what Zelensky is doing with regard to European allies. I want to come on to that in a second. There's just been some sort of breaking news statements, I guess, from Zelensky. I don't know if these are direct quotes or sort of synopsis quotes from Max 25 on Blue Sky. He says, Ukraine's national interest, this is Zelensky speaking, Ukraine's national interest must be taken into account. We will work with the United States. The pressure on Ukraine is currently one of the heaviest. So this is Zelensky saying that there is immense pressure, and that pressure, I assume, is coming entirely from the United States. Also here, another quote could be a synopsis. Now is one of the most difficult moments in our history. Now Ukraine may face a very difficult choice. This is super important. Either loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. Wow. Or difficult 28 points, or an extremely difficult winter, the most difficult, and further risks. Life without freedom, dignity, and justice. And for us to believe the one who has attacked twice already, they will expect an answer from us. So, like, he really is saying we are on the brink of losing a partner. Like they could, it looks like they
But
could
that's
lose the US
leadership.
over this.
You don't wait, you don't fudge it, you come straight out and you say, this is the binary option. We either surrender, and my goodness, we'll dig through what it means if Ukraine was to sign up to this, because I think it's calamitous series of implications if they were to sign up to this peace. I don't think they can and will. Other than that, you have to have a grown-up conversation and say, okay, this is the binary choice. And if we say, no, thank you, Mr. Trump, this is what we should expect from it. And I think that's leadership. It's kind of leadership, which unfortunately we haven't really seen too much from that many Europeans. Of course, I always exclude Finland from that. They tend to be very straight with their populations. Sweden, Denmark as well, tend to be far more direct with their electorates. And of course, Poland, even though it has an extraordinary political divisiveness, Tusk and others seem to be fairly direct in terms of articulating the threat from Russia to their electorates.
So Zelensky really, he's just, what I said, I think is exactly what Zelensky said. He's done the special address to the nation. There's another quote here. We did not betray Ukraine then, so February 2024, February the 24th, 2022. We did not betray Ukraine then, and we will not betray it now. I know that the people are with me. The next week will be difficult. There will be a lot of pressure, political, informational, to break us up. I mean, wow. Yeah, I was going to come on to that.
We'll come on to that. I'm gonna, in the midst of all the bad news, here's a lovely bit of good news. But that's bold. I mean, there's a bold words from Zelensky.
It is.
But
it also shows how much, it shows how much pressure the US really are putting on them. I mean, this is do or die. And it looks like, I mean, on the one hand, this might be good news that the US can just be cut off and we don't have to dilly-dally around pandering to Trump.
Finally. And then Europe needs to make a bloody decision on which side it is, up Trump's arse or saving itself.
But Jonathan, why have Europe been dilly-dallying around and pandering to Trump? Why?
Because they're hoping that Trump comes back on side. So a final break with Trump. Well, also, I mean, analysts will tell you, though? Because we're dependent on US munitions. We haven't invested in our own security.
Intelligence. So
it's intelligence and munitions and capabilities, various capabilities.
On the one hand, this is great. Could be a great opportunity to kind of cut the US loose from this whole conflict, and it becomes a European thing, and with not actually Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, it becomes an ally thing, and arguably the US just simply aren't allies anymore. But the problem there is vital intelligence that US provide that I don't think can be replaced. And that will include planes flying around. That will include all sorts of important things that the US does, and also logistics into Poland. There's still loads of weapons coming.
I mean, there'll be certain parts they can source from Europe, but eventually, those machines are very component hungry, right? They need regular repairs or they drop out of the sky. I mean, this is all which is why doing a deal with France is a far better move, and weaning yourself off. But of course, those machines are not going to be in the field for a long time. The finances still need to be sorted out on those, and they won't get delivery of those Rafales until at least I guess late 26, 27, if they're lucky, if any of them start coming on stream. US putting out has other implications. What if US troops then pulled from Europe? What if we have further intelligence breakdowns? And the British have already withdrawn intelligence in the Caribbean because the suspicion there, of course, is that the US is committing what could be construed as war crimes. What if the intelligence relationships break down further? This could set off a cascade, which, let's face it, has been a long time building up.
Yeah. So this is just a horrible dilemma. There seems to be potentially no good outcome to this. Like the US has well, and when I say the US, of course, I'm doing a short cut for the Trump administration. The Trump administration has put Ukraine in a really difficult situation where they either lose the United States and everything that US brings to the table, or they have a terrible, terrible deal that screws them over. Now, Zelensky's just said this as well.
That deal in a minute, but yeah, finish that thought, and then we'll pick through the
Yeah,
deal.
so he said we need to get together, come to our senses, stop the bullshit, stop the political games. The state must work. The parliament of a warring country must work unitedly. So that's with reference to the corruption scandal. The government of a warring country must work effectively. So what you have had. So to finish my thought off from earlier, like the second thing to consider here is now he has gone straight to Europe. So he's spoken, I think, already to Starmer, Macron, and Merz, possibly all together. And you, I think, are going to see a European unity around Ukraine. That's then going to, I think, accentuate the rift in the EU with regard to Hungary. And then Slovakia, and Hungary and Slovakia as NATO members can then say, well, look, the US is going this other way. Well, like we're going with them, and then that breaks NATO up. So there are loads of unwanted ramifications to what's going on here. And this is all because the US is pressuring Zelensky with a completely unreasonable set of demands.
This is it. And we have to understand, I mean, Zelensky will understand very keenly what would happen if he were to acquiesce to those demands. And let's be a little catastrophic at this point. And this is based on the idea that Zelensky knows that he cannot. He knows that he will not carry society with him. In the first instance, he has learnt that he cannot move forward unless he takes civil society with him. And the corruption scandal actually in the summer shows that when he tried to preemptively, I think, or where I suspect Yermak was trying to get him to shut down NABU, the two anti-corruption organizations, using the line that they've been infiltrated by Russian special ops or intelligence services to fragment the country. I think Zelensky was spun quite a compelling story that actually there's Russian infiltration everywhere and you cannot trust any of these things. We have to take control of it, blah, blah, blah. I somewhat suspect that Yermak almost certainly knew details of the scandal that was being building. So this is a huge and extensive piece of research that has been done into the Ukrenerga, or the atomic one scandal, not Ukrenerga.
Energoatom.
Energoatom, that's it. He would have had at least some inkling that was going on. Now, he's not been directly implicated in it, although there's some dotted line to some dubious property investment, one of which has his name on. But I think he may have thought that by shielding his friends and associates, possibly even himself, he could shut that down, nip it in the bud by getting these corruption agencies, putting a lid on it. That hasn't worked. I mean, Zelensky obviously needs to take control of that, but I think he's still being fed narratives about, Russian conspiracy behind every door. But I think he's intelligent enough to say that if he doesn't take action now, both internally within the government, but also to not go down the path of this agreement, he can still, bring things together. But if he doesn't, and if he were to give in and say, okay, well, we have to sign this because we're under coercion, what might happen? I think he would be ousted. I think the government would collapse and he'd be ousted because nobody in Ukraine who's fighting, who has relatives fighting, who understands what these moral values mean and what it means to preserve Ukrainian sovereignty, everything they fought for, and all the Russian bullshit, which most people in Ukraine now understand and can see through, they would see it as an absolute betrayal. I don't think any Ukrainian leader that signed up to even half or even 1% of what's in this 28-point plan would survive as a government. They'd be gone, and they certainly couldn't get any kind of referendum on it. And I also think that Zelensky would have to have some form of go to the people or referendum before such a deal were to be accepted anyway.
I want to just make an announcement that I am 2 days too late, I have to say. I'm going to record straight after this live stream an explainer on the corruption scandal. It's going to be somewhat uncomfortable viewing, but it will give hopefully a really good explanation of what has happened with regard to the corruption scandal and the details thereof. So please check that out when it drops sometime later today. Thank you very much to Benny Pie, who's actually done all the research for me on that one. I was unable to have the time, and people
don't like hearing that though, and expect a lot of aggrieved pro-Ukraine people saying, this is not the time.
I mean, I
Ukrainians
think we need to
themselves
understand
have
what's
to,
going on to understand
yeah,
why people are making the decisions they're making. But it is going to be uncomfortable. But it's about what they do with it going forward. I mean, part of the thing about corruption scandals in democracies is um, when they are revealed, that is
hmm
democracy working, right? Or it's the mechanisms of democracy working. Like you kind of need to worry when they're not revealed in a sense. I mean, it's great there's no corruption, at least so you think, but actually, at least they've got these agencies that are bringing these to the fore. So that is a good functioning going on there. Now,
well,
Benny
yeah.
Pie, speaking of Benny Pie, he said, given Zelensky's recent drop in popularity due to this scandal, so his popularity's precipitously dropped, will this affect his authority and mandate to fight Ukraine's corner? Now, my opinion, and was it Yuri that said this yesterday, but I don't know, Jonathan, but my opinion is that the nation will probably get behind him at a time when the US is putting all this pressure on, that with the corruption scandal,
Yes.
if he is not implicated at all himself, then I think that while they might drop in kind of he might drop in objective popularity ratings, the rally round the flag effect will, I think that, there's no other viable option other than him at the moment.
And people will rally around. They will, and they are putting pressure on him to sideline Yermak and create a far more open and transparent, consultative form of governance. It's kind of my view that at this stage of the war, that is necessary in any case, because they need to move forward on a more collegiate fashion. Also, there's someone who baits a lot of points, who really vehemently disagreed with some of the things I'd said and some of the videos I'd done, pointing out that Yermak's got a difficult job and Zelensky can't be everywhere at once, etc., etc. But many Ukrainians will say, look, the fact is Yermak is not a professional diplomat. He's not a professional either politician or administrator, and he is potentially out of his depth. And in any case, trying to do a job that really, is a job that multiple people are required to do. So I think if Ukraine is going to move forward in a more efficient manner to fight the war, defend itself, and put in place a firm foundation for the future, it cannot just depend on a small clique of people making the decisions and being a gatekeeper. But I think you're right. If Zelensky makes the right decision, and I think his political antennae are extraordinarily good, probably better than most politicians in office anywhere in the world, I think he will sense where it's going and what needs to happen and do the right thing, because the alternative, as you say, is extremely dangerous.
And it could be an opportunity to form a unity government where it is not just a servant of the people, but actually he gets in members from other parties, and that would probably be a fairly clever thing to do as well. But the problem is with Yermak, if you get rid of Yermak, like he said previously, he's his right-hand man. He's like his right hand. So, if he cuts off his right hand, is there a sense that, because some people say that Zelensky is Yermak, that he would, if Yermak was to go, then Zelensky would just be.
I think there's a lot more to Zelensky than Yermak. I mean, I don't think that he's necessarily the power behind the throne. I think the First Lady is also a very powerful presence and a powerful voice as well behind the scenes that we don't tend to see as much. Yermak, one of his big things is trying to deal with the US. And if the US is, let's say, no longer a factor, and we dismiss them, well, there's a chunk of Yermak's role gone right there. But I think there's a possibility of turning this around. I mean, my friend Joe Lindsley made the point, I think it's a very, very good one, that you cannot limit a government of national unity just to the Rada, just to politicians. I think the strength of Ukraine's resistance and resilience since 2014 has in large part depended on civic society, on technologists, entrepreneurs, and people from other walks of life. So I think if you're going to have a true representative form of governance, you would need to bring a lot more of those in. Now, Zelensky has consulted far more with civic society at this point in the war, in the last year, than he did right at the start. And that's a positive improvement. And of course, the demonstration on the streets have reminded him really that he is there to represent the people, not to tell them what to do. So I think there's potentially the foundations for something good to come out of this. But Putin is cornered, and he's going to get much more vicious when he's cornered. Trump is also cornered, and we are seeing him immediately, baring his fangs and his his claws, as it were. And we just had to, we're going to get a lot more of this. I think that incident in the White House plane where he, jabbed his finger in the face of a female journalist and called her piggy, which is, and told her to shut up, basically, and his treatment of journalists generally, this is disgusting. It's classless. It's abhorrent. It reveals his absolute tactlessness, tastelessness, his vile bullying personality. It reveals that he is scum in a suit. So unfortunately, we should expect a lot more unpleasantness as he is cornered further.
Anecdote as it is, Tim White has just said, wow, I looked at a couple of channels where Zelensky's speech was reposted and the replies are vitriolic towards the president, even worse than imagined. It's not scientific, but for instance, Exile Nova is a patriotic, apolitical page and it's 85% against Zelensky. So that's interesting because that should be a speech where he's standing up. It seems to be a speech where he's like kind of stood up to the United States. I know that's just anecdotal, but I wonder if he's really going to struggle to thread the needle here. I mean, there's so much going on. I just can't believe. I think it's largely going to come down as well to how Europe treats the United States, whether the kid gloves are going to come off with regard to European leaders and they stand up to Trump and say, this is not acceptable. You cannot make these demands on Ukraine, or whether they're still going to try and massage Trump to the same conclusion, but how robust are the European leaders going to be, because they are quids in at the moment. So people like Merz have come along in Germany and they've really got behind Ukraine. Tusk and Radosław Sikorski in Poland are doing so. Macron, for what it's worth, is doing so, although he's got a very interesting political landscape. Starmer really has as well, and I think they
there's the AfD in Germany. I think we've got three scenarios of extreme fragility, not least the UK, where Lieutenant Colonel Farage is.
Well, do you want to show that link I've got?
Yes.
Show this. So the news that's come in is that the former Reform leaders, or Reform, for those who don't know, are the UK right-wing populist movement that now include slightly wider umbrella than just sort of right-wingness, but they are the equivalent to AfD in Germany and Rassemblement National in France. They are they had this Welsh leader, Nathan Gill, who was a friend of Nigel Farage, although Farage denied it and now he accepts it, and he's been found guilty for taking bribes essentially from Russia, and now he's been sentenced, and that's a 10.5-year sentence, which is significant, I think, and that's good news. That is good news for like the UK making a statement there, or our judicial system making a statement. This guy goes down for 10.5 years. My position now is, well, Nigel Farage said exactly the same sort of things as this guy, and this guy was saying them because he was getting paid. So why is Nigel Farage been saying those exact same things in the exact same places at the exact same time? Like, he needs to be investigated. My position would be very clearly, Nigel Farage needs to be investigated for connections to Russia. He almost had a show on Russia Today. He's been on there something like 17 times plus. He says all the same talking points.
Payments he got, by the way. We don't know how much he got paid for numerous RT experiences, shows, as it were, appearances. That could be interesting.
Yeah, and I think Nigel Farage needs to be investigated for an awful lot of things at the moment. And it's fascinating that Farage actually turns up. You can put us on big screen again. Farage turns up in the Epstein files as well as showing this link between. So for those who don't know, Steve Bannon, who used to be the guy behind Donald Trump in Trump 1.0, the beginning at least of Trump 1.0, Steve Bannon, if you remember the SNL sketches, he was a guy standing behind Donald Trump with a Grim Reaper's scythe and cloak. Steve Bannon was then left the White House, kind of sort of kicked out the White House but he went to Europe afterwards to form a network of far-right populist parties to make sure, in his view, that Europe would eschew the European Union and would become this right-wing populist mecca. So he was connecting people like AfD to Rassemblement National and whatever. And he was in, I think, Italy for some time, Steve Bannon. So he is formalizing. This was literally a formal project of, I forget what the movement was called, the network was called. But Farage was in on that. And even though supposedly Epstein was this Democrat, Epstein was facilitating this as well. So anyway, Farage has formally been involved with people like Steve Bannon, which, you know, in my opinion, it should mean that Farage should be touched at most with a 20-foot barge pole.
No, absolutely.
He is just bad news for everything. And then, of course, you've got all the money coming into Leave.eu potentially.
But there was Elon Musk
Russia
as well, wasn't there, Jonathan? So before they had a little falling out, it seemed that Elon Musk was keen on bankrolling Farage's rise to number 10.
Yep. And you've got Aaron Banks, who's involved with Brexit, his money from Russia, his involvement meeting Russian ambassadors. There's an awful lot of stuff that needs to be investigated in the United Kingdom with regard to our populist right being fully in bed with the Russians and nefarious people around the world. And I think people are afraid to attack Farage because he's so powerful at the moment in terms of public perception. But I think he needs to be bloody investigated. There's something doesn't add up, or the other way around. Actually, an awful lot does add up. But
it does add up. Follow the money is always the thing there. I won't name any names, but there are a number of extraordinarily accomplished journalists in the UK who are investigating the money trail that leads. Pete Jukes is one of the more visible ones now, but
Carol Cadwallader.
That's Carol Cadwallader. They're the ones willing to take the legal risk. There are others working behind the scenes on other stories of people surrounding Farage and indeed potentially Farage himself. So expect more of those to drop. My worry is that Farage at the moment and Boris Johnson blazed a trail here, which is if you bluster in with that sense of absolute impunity, and now Boris Johnson paid for some of his impunity because he was kicked out of office. Or one could argue maybe that was just sheer incompetence as opposed to the illegality that took place. But I worry that Farage has this Teflon quality of Trump. Now, if Trump's star is waning, that's good news because it means that there isn't limitless impunity. But I still worry that Farage is someone who has not been held to account because of numerous misdemeanors. Therefore, it's going to be hard to make stuff stick to him.
You're getting a lot of reform adjacent people, analysts or reporters, people on GB News, people associated with reform saying, openly asking the question, this has happened a number of times. Someone else was talking about this the other day, saying that people are now out in the open saying, do you think that Britain, because it's so broken under the present government, so they claim it's so broken, do you think we need a Trump? So people are genuinely like, this is how we are being hijacked. I did a whole video on this recently on how I think what you're seeing with the attack on the BBC was basically MAGA being forcibly imported into the United Kingdom, and we are having a MAGAnization of our political landscape to the point where it's now acceptable for people to go, do you think we need a Trump? Well, no. Have you seen what Trump has done? I mean, honestly, mate, like, really? That's the guy that's your go-to guy? Freaking hell, mate.
It's the guy that broke the machine. Here, take a spanner, come and fix it. I think there's something there. I mean, there's something that worries me a lot actually about this. And it's not just that people are attracted to simplistic solutions and populists. I'm looking next year to sort of write articles and try and get more stuff published. And one of these is going to be based on the idea that our democracy has turned from a complex, functioning, and sometimes dysfunctional machine into something that more resembles a cargo cult, which is that the people that rely on the largesse and the materiel and the function of the machine no longer understand in any sense how it works. So when it starts to break down, as it has, and partly because of the Brexit that was facilitated and inspired by Farage, they don't understand the machine, but the machine has stopped giving them all the lovely bounty that it did before. So by going to the guy who broke the machine to fix it is really saying that they don't understand how their democracy works, how checks and balances work, how any of this stuff works anymore, and people don't realize that they need to take a degree of responsibility in learning about their own system and then participating in it. I think this is a lesson which Ukrainians can teach us, because they realize that if they do not participate, if they do not understand how their system works, and discuss it endlessly and debate it endlessly, then you'll lose it to someone who will smash that system and replace it with something that works for them. In the case of Ukraine, it was Vladimir Putin. In our case, Farage will take this system and he'll crank it to the benefit of himself and his own cronies.
Can I take us back to the sort of peace negotiation and the idea that, it looks like the US is trying to, no, you can put us on big, not although that was still worth referencing, but I won't. The US is looking to profit off it, which is quite staggering for me. I find that really distasteful. How written
they
into
want a cut of the assets, right?
Yeah,
central bank assets. Go on, give us some of that.
Well, the EU has put in more money than Europe has put in more money than the US. You could say, and per capita, somewhere like Norway and Sweden and Denmark have, and all the Baltic nations. So, why aren't they getting cut? It's absolutely outrageous. But anyway, that wasn't what I was going to say. Someone asked this question in a live stream as well. What's the chance of the United States political machine actually standing with Ukraine? So if Trump does threaten to do this stuff, actually, when you've got people like yesterday, Newt Gingrich coming out and indicating that this looks like a surrender document, when you've got Republicans who have been given a permission structure by the Epstein discharge petition to go against Trump. So now they were going against Trump, and so he read the tea leaves and said, okay, you should go and vote for the discharge petition. They virtually unanimously did. The entire Senate and everyone but one representative voted for that. So I think there's a permission now for people to. Marjorie Taylor Greene's done it, and people are going, oh, we can stand up to Trump, because actually secretly I think he's a complete nut job. So there is a chance that actually if the US goes, right, we're going to punish Ukraine for not signing up to this deal ASAP, for this horrendous deal, we're going to pull our military support, and we're going to pull our intel, you might get people from within the machine, like I talked about yesterday, kicking up a fuss there, and you might get Republican and Democrat senators and representatives go absolutely batshit crazy. And that might happen.
I think what you're getting to is the heart of what Russia's purpose in this actually is. And this has been curiously absent from almost all the commentary that I've been, imbibing the last sort of few hours. It's all focusing on the internal political situation in the US, what Trump said, etc., the factions. And I think that's fair to try and figure out what's going on. Then there's some commentary about Europeans being weak and whatever. Almost no one is saying, hang on a second, Putin cannot end this war. Why can't he not end this war? Because he would have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of psychopathic and traumatized sort of rapey soldiers returning to Russia, not only causing chaos, but potentially challenging his regime and control. Plus, the questions will be asked, what was this all for, etc. His survival is intimately tied with keeping the war, or at least some sense of confrontation, going. And he needs that constant drip, drip, drip of news war. He's needed it since 2014. We forget that. But the Russian informational ecosystem has been absolutely dependent, like a crack addict, on war and hatred since 2014. And it's no coincidence that also coincides, of course, with Maidan, but also 2012, there was the most significant challenge to Putin's power in the Bolotnaya protests. So he is addicted like 1984, Big Brother, to this eternal warfare. So there's no concept of it stopping. There's no concept of peace coming from Putin. He needs confrontation, whether that's direct on the ground in Ukraine or whether that morphs into a scaled up hybrid war or whatever it happens to be. He cannot exist without any of this stuff. There's very little discussion of that, whether Putin actually wants peace. Because if we conclude that really he doesn't want peace, and that is the most likely scenario here, it means that what we're seeing unfold at the moment is a psychological operation designed to distract, designed to divide allies, designed to divide Ukraine from the US, Europe from the US, collapse NATO, etc. Well, hang on a second. That seems to be working quite well. This may be the point. Division, distraction, and collapse of alliances is the point, not peace or humiliation through peace. Because looking at those conditions, he probably didn't expect Ukraine to sign up to it.
Another thing to add to understanding why Zelensky's just come out and gave the speech that he did, I understand that the speech that Zelensky gave, and I've quoted some of what he said to you, which is very strong and very much talking about, well, it's either this or it's that or it's that, like a very stark dilemma, and it's looking like we could lose our mates here, as in the US. That apparently took place, that speech, he recorded it straight after the telephone call with JD Vance. So he's on the call to JD Vance, who's a vice president who we already know doesn't like Ukraine. You already know he's got that kind of Project 2025 isolationist bent to him, and speaks to Zelensky. Zelensky gets off the phone. It's obviously bad. It's obviously bad news on the phone to JD Vance that the US is going for it, and he says that pretty stark message to the country, where essentially we've got to stick together, and we've got this choice, or this choice, and hopefully, Europe just stands up with Ukraine and for our own security, of course.
And I think there are some people I was speaking to who got a little forewarning of some of the stuff that was likely to be in these peace documents and the conversations that were going to happen around them. And these are hardened people who've been through the various cycles of Trump, soft appeasement, hard appeasement in Russia, whatever. They said they were horrified and shocked by what they saw and what was about to land. I suspect we haven't even seen all of it yet.
I mean, you could, if you're being as charitable as possible, you say that this is a starting place, right? And then you can work from here. It's not all set in stone. And kind of that's how the Americans are trying to sell it. But the starting place is Russian maximalism. So it's as if the Americans have just gone, right, whatever Kirill Dmitriev said, and then we'll put on some security guarantees. But of course, like I said in my video this morning, they keep talking about this is a big win for Zelensky, the security guarantees, and they are, like, looks like they're pretty robust security guarantees. But that's not like a concession. That's not a thing that Ukraine gets. That's a mechanism to stop the war returning. It's not a tangible gain.
They're really robust. Who believes?
I believe, like,
they'd actually be put in place.
Well,
and how would it be put in place? Wait, would it trigger World War III if Russia sent a drone over and killed somebody? Would it trigger it if they sent 100 drones over? Would it, if they create some kind of, confrontation or provocation where they had to go and retake a piece of territory because of whatever, blah and blah? We know how this worked. I don't believe there are any security guarantees that can be provided while Russia still has a vast army parked on the territory of Ukraine with sort of, let's say, slightly indeterminate and amorphous borders. I just do not believe that's enforceable, and there's the will to enforce it.
Possibly, but then you are just looking at security guarantees never being enforceable. I mean, just assume, though, for the sake of argument, these security guarantees are robust and they will work and blah blah blah. But it's the idea that this is what Ukraine get is security guarantees. This is what Russia gets: Donbass, half of Zaporizhia, half of Kherson, Crimea. No war crimes are going to be followed up. Sanctions back lifted off, economic work with the US, blah blah blah. Yeah, the list goes on and on and on. These are all like actual positive things. Do you know what I mean? These are things that Russia gains, right? They gain. security guarantees is not a thing. It's not a thing that Ukraine gains. So to balance these two things out, oh, well done, you get security guarantees, Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia gets literally territory and let off all of this stuff, and loads of money coming their way from deals with the US. It's absolutely outrageous. It just makes me spit poison and fire and anger.
The idea that there would be impunity for the crimes committed, that they wouldn't even, you know, okay, we're gonna, you know, everyone's forgiven for all the nasty stuff.
And back in the G8,
Ukraine didn't do any nasty stuff, and yeah, maybe we'll send a few children back, but actually, you don't know how many there are, and we're not going to tell you, and we've lost the records anyway. I mean, there's no sense of real justice here, which means that Ukrainians will not go for it. And then there's other things as well in there which are totally antithetical to a sovereign state. Having the Russian KGB spy church imposed on you, forced on you, having the Russian language made into a co-equal language on the territory. This means Ukraine is not sovereign. It's not an agreement which guarantees a sovereign Ukraine. It would create an emasculated Ukraine. Now, some people say, well, hang on a second, you know, Finland lost some of its territory, etc. And then you had Finlandization. There's nothing like the coercive controls in this agreement that Finland had to put up with there. And many Finns will tell you that, you know, living next door to Russia and having to have that sort of form of soft appeasement was bad enough.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely outrageous, and you know, to then allow them back into the G8 and all of this stuff. I mean, legendary BBC journalist John Simpson has just said Putin was in danger of failing in his Ukraine war. Now the US peace plan gives him everything he wants. Even the parts of the Donbass troops were incapable of winning. Ukraine, the injured party in this war, gets absolutely zero. And that's my point. It's just completely stacked. Honestly, I'm making myself more and more angry. But there you go.
And it does seem that the faction, if we go back to the factions, it seems that this is coming at the time that not only is Trump weakened, and actually there's several people I spoke to yesterday who were saying, well, do you know what, it's quite possible that this is an agreement that Trump wasn't really across and didn't know anything about, and it's been foisted in there, injected in there. It comes at the same time where the Witkoff faction has come out on top, and because Rubio doesn't have a spine, he'll go with whoever wins. Actually, I'm afraid it's become clearer and clearer today that Trump is entirely behind this, and it has his mandate behind it, and he's all up for the humiliation and the imposition of this. He's right there, you know, up for it completely. So I think we can't absolve the Tsar.
No, my position would be slightly nuanced, is that he won't be involved in developing these 28 plans. But if someone like, he doesn't have the knowledge of all of this stuff really all the time, but if he gets his minions who are thinking along the same lines as him, Isolationist, Project 2025, Steve Witkoff and blah, 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 they develop what essentially is just what Russia wants. You take it to Trump and Trump says, yeah, brilliant. This is going to all Trump cares about is that this war ends as soon as possible. He doesn't have one molecule of morality in him or desire to see this to be a just outcome. So we keep hearing, whenever you hear Kaja Kallas or Donald Tusk or Keir Starmer or Friedrich Merz speak, you always hear this term, a just and lasting peace. Like the Americans at the moment, the Trump administration never talk about a just peace. They talk about a quick peace. He says, I want it now. I want it by Thanksgiving. I want it by this time. And if you don't, we're going to cut intel. It's nothing to do with morality or political strategizing, even outside of, we want to do trade with Russia. We want them back on the scene, and we want to be getting involved with their hydrocarbons and diamonds and gold and all the stuff that they're involved in. Yeah, outrageous.
It's you know, and they've started using this word. I heard Caroline Leavitt use the word robust and sustainable peace and fair and balanced and all. It's none of these things. It's none of these things, and it won't lead to that either. I think what it would lead to, if it was to be enacted, and we know it won't be, but if we did go down that route, and even if we got to the route of just a ceasefire on current lines, peace is not peace. And this is something that almost all mainstream journalists just do not probe into this. and they use these terms which are hollow and meaningless. Peace with Putin is not peace. It's a form of, it's not even Cold War. It's a form of hybrid war, which you're in. And that hybrid war is intensifying. So there is no concept of peace. There is no peace deal. It's just that the aggression will transmute into another form. And I find the normalizing phrases and narratives used in much of the media to now be divisive and dangerous. They irk me almost as much as the politicians. We probably need to dig at some point into the role of Axios and the FT, because the FT has been with. He's been on my channel, but I'm increasingly perturbed by his activity. Christopher Miller of the FT. He made his name some years ago by writing about Azov Nazis, and that's one of the things that helped to establish him. That turned out to be somewhat sort of disingenuous and unbalanced. But it does seem that he is able to, or he is a conduit of choice when the Kremlin wants to seed narratives into the Western media. And we know that the FT is one of the most substantive publications read by analysts and politicians and business people around the capitalist world.
Well, Owen Matthews at the Daily Telegraph. Daily Telegraph seems to be all over the shop at the moment. Owen Matthews, who I've read his book Overreach on the Ukraine war, and it's an excellent book. And every article he seems to be writing now, he's just anti-Ukraine. And
he's got a vendetta against Zelensky specifically, and that starts to ladder up to what looks like a plot, in my view. Again, Owen Matthews is lovely on a personal level. He's very open and willing to enter into dialogue. And as you say, his book was fascinating, and he is an excellent speaker. But there's a definite tendency to see the world through Moscow's eyes. He does have Russian ancestry, which he's very open about. But recently, his output has resembled no more nor less than a personal vendetta against Zelensky, and you have to wonder, well, what on earth is going on there?
Do you want me, if you share my screen again? I don't know if it's worth doing, but this is, and thank you to Benny Pie, who's just put a translation of this together using good old AI. So thank you, Benny Pie. Is it worth me reading out? I mean, it's 2 pages. Is it worth me reading out Zelensky's speech?
Yeah, definitely go for it. I think, and we'll be doing analysis of it later. But I think it's worth sharing with people.
And thanks, Benny Pie. Right, so Ukrainians, in the life of every nation, there is a moment when everyone needs to talk honestly, calmly, without speculation, rumors, or gossip, without anything superfluous, just as it is, just as I always try to speak with you. Currently, this is one of the hardest moments in our history. The pressure on Ukraine is now one of the heaviest. Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner, or complex 28 points, or an extremely difficult winter, the hardest, and subsequent risks. Life without freedom, without dignity, without justice, and for us to believe the one who has already attacked twice. They will expect an answer from us, though in reality, I already gave it on the 20th of May 2019 when swearing allegiance to Ukraine. I specifically said, I, Volodymyr Zelensky, elected by the will of the people as president of Ukraine, pledged to defend the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine with all my deeds, to protect the rights and freedoms of citizens, to adhere to the constitution and the laws of Ukraine, to fulfill my duties in the interests of all compatriots, and to raise the authority of Ukraine in the world. For me, this is not a protocol formality for a tick box. This is an oath. And every day, with every word, I keep my loyalty. I will never betray it. The national Ukrainian interest must be taken into account. We are not making loud statements. We will work calmly with America and all partners. There will be a constructive search for solutions with our main partner. I will provide arguments. I will persuade, propose alternatives. But specifically, we will not give the enemy reasons to say that it is Ukraine that does not want peace, that it is she who is disrupting the process, and that Ukraine is not ready for diplomacy. That will not happen. Ukraine will work quickly today, on Saturday and Sunday, all next week, and as much as necessary in a 24/7 regime. I will fight to ensure that among all the points of the plan, at least 2 are not omitted. These are dignity and the freedom of Ukrainians, because everything else is based precisely on this: our sovereignty, our independence, our land, our people, and the Ukrainian future. We will and must do everything so that the result is the end of the war and not the end of Ukraine, the end of Europe and global peace. I spoke just now with Europeans. We are counting on European friends who clearly understand that Russia is not somewhere far away, that it is right next to the EU borders, that Ukraine is now the only shield separating comfortable European life from Putin's plans. We remember Europe was with us. We believe Europe will be with us. Ukraine must not see deja vu of the 24th of February, when there was a feeling that we were alone, when no one could stop Russia, except for our heroic people, who became a wall against Putin's army. And undoubtedly, it was very pleasing for us when the world said, Ukrainians, they are incredible. God, what people they are, how they fight, how Ukrainians struggle, what titans they are. And this is true, absolutely. But both Europe and the whole world must understand another truth, that Ukrainians are, first and foremost, people. We have been holding back one of the largest armies in the world for almost 4 years and a full-scale invasion, and we hold the front line with several thousand kilometers, and our people endure shelling, missile attacks, ballistic strikes, and Shahed strikes every night. And our people lose someone from their loved ones every day. And our people very, very much want this war to end. We are, of course, made of steel, but any metal, even the strongest, may not withstand. Do not forget about this. Be with Ukraine, be with our people, and therefore be with dignity and freedom. Dear Ukrainians, he finishes, dear Ukrainians, recall that first day of the war. Most of us made a choice in favor of Ukraine. Recall our feelings then. How was it? It was dark, loud, difficult, painful. For many, it was scary, but the enemy did not see our backs fleeing. He saw our eyes, full of readiness to fight for our own. This is dignity. This is freedom. And this is actually the scariest thing that can be for Russia, to see the unity of Ukrainians. Back then, our unity was directed at protecting our home from the enemy. And now unity is also needed for us like never before, so that there is a dignified peace in our home. I appeal now to all Ukrainians, our people, citizens, politicians, everyone. We need to gather ourselves, come to our senses, stop the quarreling, stop the political games. The state must work. The parliament of the warring country must work unitedly. The government of a warring country must work effectively. And all of us together must not forget and not confuse who exactly is Ukraine's enemy today. I remember how on the first day of the war, various walkers passed me various plans, points, ultimatums were made regarding the end of the war. They said, either this or no way. Either you sign this or you'll simply be liquidated. And instead of you, an acting president of Ukraine will sign it. How that ended is known. Many of those walkers became part of the exchange fund and were sent together with their proposals and points home to their native harbor. I did not betray Ukraine then. I certainly felt behind my shoulders the support of everyone, each of you, every Ukrainian man and woman, every soldier, every volunteer, every medic, diplomat, journalist, of all our people. We did not betray Ukraine then. We will not do it now. And I know for sure that at this truly one of the hardest moments of our history, I am not alone. With me are our people, society, warriors, partners, allies, all our people, dignified, free, united. Happy day of dignity and freedom. Glory to Ukraine.
It's powerful stuff, and there's a lot of buttons in there, I think, which will resonate with people, despite many of them quite rightly feeling a sense of, let's say, a borderline betrayal with the corruption scandal that's going on. But there's a lot of buttons pressed in there. But it's also quite sober. I mean, it does suggest that, as we know, there are some very dark binary choices coming up.
Yes, and I think we are approaching a real inflection point, and we could keep talking about inflection points, but you know, this is a choice for Europe, it's a choice for the United States, it's a choice for Ukrainians and their political landscape, but also the everyday Ukrainian person as well. Incredibly important time indeed. And you can put us back on full screen if you want, but one thing, another thing that frustrates me about the peace plan is the idea that they get to dictate that Ukraine's army should be capped at 600,000, that they're not allowed to do this, they're not allowed to do that, and yet there's no such declaration for or no demand for Russia to commit to such arbitrary numbers and constrain their own army when they were the ones who invaded. Right? Just
well,
again,
it's not just constraining the Russian army on Russian territory. There is no constraint here about how many troops Russia can station on Ukrainian occupied territory, what size of occupying army, and what kind of capabilities it can include. And let's remember, it is not Russia's sovereign territory. So there's nothing in here that will check or limit Russia. But there is a commitment to help replenish Russia's budget, replenish their war fund, replenish their war machine, admit them to international institutions, launder their reputation. We have to ask ourselves, what does Russia do when it feels stronger? What does Russia do when it has the resources to inflict aggression? It inflicts aggression. That's what it does. And so this is a proposal to rearm the bear, to return its claws, help it sharpen them up, and get it ready for the next attack. This is simply what this is. And you can bet that the next attack would be against Ukraine, but it may be against other countries. So this is not only an agreement. I can't use the word the S word because trolls have realized they can get videos taken down. But it is self-destructive in the extreme. It would be entirely self-destructive for Ukraine to sign up to it. It actually would be self-destructive if Europe sat on the sidelines to wait and see what happens. What Europe needs to now do is, in a full and demonstrable fashion, say this will not stand, this is not acceptable, and we will put our money exactly in that place to support those principles. I think Ukraine at this point will stand or fall on this based on how united Europe is behind it. Because with a united Europe, Trump will be forced to retract, and he may lash out, but it won't pass any further unless Europe just remains passive.
Yeah, and you wonder whether other things could come into play, like if Europe stands strong with Ukraine, does this then entail a furtherance to the trade war that Trump has started with, I don't know, everybody? Do we see increased tariffs? How personally will Trump take it? There are so many considerations here, but I really do hope, and I think Europe are and will stand really strong with Ukraine. I mean, even the Institute for the Study of War, looking at this from a kind of more hawkish, what would have been understood to be quite a Republican, maybe old school Republican view. People often attack Kagan at Institute for the Study of War being one of these such people. But anyway, the reported peace plan cedes all Western and Ukrainian leverage to Russia. They've gone to town on this being bad. I mean, I think only the most isolationist MAGA Americans in the Trump administration, Project 2025 people, are in favor of this. I would imagine, like most Americans and most politicians in America must think that this, I mean, surely if you just look at if you put a table of what's to the benefit of Russia and what's to the benefit of Ukraine, of the 28 points, you just go, well, like, it's obvious this is just a set of Russian demands.
Yes, it's absolutely 100% clear. And I think there are many who will know that, who will realize that in the Republican Party. Whether they are at a point where they're able to stand up to Trump yet. As you mentioned earlier, in Epstein, there's some first signs of dissent in terms of the unanimous or near unanimous approval to release the Epstein files. But I suspect we're not at that point yet where Trump's, not authority, because that's the wrong word, isn't it? Because he doesn't command respect, he commands fear. His fear still has some agency, I think, within the GOP, which means that those who are shocked and appalled, and many will be by this, even within MAGA circles, there are people who are going to look at this and go, well, hang on a second, this is weakness writ large. They may well say it in private, but I doubt whether many will come out and say it in public.
I did say, and Viggo Holmson's pulled me up on this in a live chat, I did say Europe is united behind Ukraine. Of course, that's not strictly true because you've got Slovakia, Hungary, and then you've got divisions within those nations. But I was just talking about from, say, Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas to Donald Tusk and Radoslav Sikorski, to Keir Starmer and John Healey, to Emmanuel Macron, and even Giorgia Meloni, even Pedro Sanchez the other day in Spain. So I think there's a broad support for Ukraine, and probably not a lot of love for the United States as well, in terms of, if you're going to have European leaders picking a side here. At the end of the day, Trump has started a trade war with all of these countries in Europe, is hurting their economies, and yeah. So it is interesting times. Well, by the way, what's happened to Greg Terry?
Greg, no, yeah, people are asking there. No, Greg, it seems he's slept through his alarm clock. I'm not sure. It was fairly early in the morning for Greg, so we'll have to let him off that, and we'll try to get him on another time. I have removed him from the thumbnail, so he's been airbrushed from history there. Sorry, Greg.
I haven't. I am clickbaiting him. I'm using him to drive more people to watch, because that's all I care about.
Don't forget, that's what everyone's here for. What do they call it? The professor? Or do they mean Gerda? They probably mean Gerda.
They mean Gerda. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do another one of those, I think, early next week when it becomes clearer what on earth is going on. Get the prof in there and get Greg, because I think we can have a lively and robust discussion there. And
are you saying that this is not lively and robust?
Oh,
is that what you're saying?
No, it's not. No, I mean, we're broadly in alignment is what I meant. I mean, we're in alignment on pretty much everything. Whereas when we get the other two in, we have a healthy, bit of banter and disagreement. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you better not be dissing me. You better not be dissing me. This is lively and robust.
This is lively and robust, but we are broadly in agreement. I don't think you couldn't fit a little bit of rice paper in between our points of view on most things.
This is true. Although there were major disagreement on who's better looking and younger, but other than that, yeah, we generally do.
Who can drink more beer without falling over?
Well, I don't need. I've got multiple sclerosis, mate. Like I can fall. Just ask me. Just blow on me, and I go. So one of the things. This is nothing to do with anything, but one of the things I struggle with walking. I have foot drop and all sorts. And I don't have a feedback loop. And when something brushes, if my foot brushes something as I'm walking, I can't steady myself and put your foot down. Most people can just put their feet down, and if I brush something that I'm not expecting, I just go. I've luckily just got thick carpet. We got new carpets in the house like 2 years ago now, and they've saved me. I fell over in the utility room last year and I fractured my elbow, precisely because I didn't have thick carpets. So I fall over quite frequently, and thick carpets are just a lifesaver. I just bounce, and then this is comfortable. I think I'll stay down here for 5 minutes, have a bit of a rest, and then yeah. Anyway,
this is like a hairy version of was it Cracker Behind the Sofa or something? I think that was a little program on a couple of years, well, more than a couple of years ago, a couple of decades ago.
Well, I mean, you are drawing your pension now, so you would know this.
Yeah, I would know all about that. Yeah.
That's my dig at that age.
Back before television was invented, yeah.
How do we end this? Let's say a final piece. What are your final thoughts, do you think?
I think we're in for incredible turmoil. I think this is a make or break moment where I think finally the US will be ejected from this process and Trump's bullshit will be called time on. But there are consequences to that. One of those consequences will be the withdrawal of intelligence, the threat to withdraw troops from Europe, the threat to not sell arms, although, of course, that will massively damage the US economy, which is already in a parlous state. The other consequence, of course, will be that Putin will indirectly be seen to have made concessions. So when this process falls apart, I think you will see massive and vicious lashing out. It's not that we don't see that every week, but I think we will see major attacks on Ukraine as this process starts to crumble and fall apart, and Putin will make the most of that. This time, though, Ukraine can strike back. So we will also see, I don't call it retaliation because it's not. It can't be retaliation if you're the victim trying to defend yourself. But we will see massive responses there from Ukraine that will further erode Russia's energy. So I think we are where we always were, which is that this isn't a fight between two incredibly strong forces. This is a fight between two relatively weak forces, although given its size, Ukraine is so much stronger per capita and per dollar of wealth that they've got. But unfortunately, this struggle has always been about who crumbles last. And unfortunately, the Western allies all along have kept Ukraine supplied to ensure that they don't crumble before Russia, when what was really required was to fortify Ukraine to force Russia to crumble as quickly as possible. We still haven't broken that dynamic. We still haven't broken that mindset. We are still coercively controlled by a fear of Russian nuclear weapons, by a fear of Russian aggression. And we have to break that fear in the way that Ukraine's broken that fear. Until we do, this will continue on the same horrific merry-go-round of torture and insanity.
I've got a couple of things to say at the end. So we've just hearing from Trump. Next Thursday, Thanksgiving, is the right time for Ukraine to accept the US proposed peace deal. Ukraine is losing territory and Putin doesn't want to continue the war, he added. You know, of course, Putin doesn't want to continue the war.
Maybe
Trump,
something
you don't know
there,
what you're talking about. But yeah, so it's the right time to
he may have had a conversation. You may be one of those points where something slips out, which he didn't mean to. Although I rather suspect that Putin never says anything to him that he doesn't want to slip out, because he probably has the assumption that whatever you tell Trump will dribble 100%. Out of his sort of, lethargic orange mouth at some point.
And German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has just said, quote, Ukraine can count on us. Together with Macron and Starmer, I reaffirmed our full support to Zelensky. We welcome the US commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, but the current contact line must remain the foundation for any negotiations. In other words, they can't have all of Donbass straight away. So that's Merz very forcefully, I think, saying, well, that's not going to work. And saying that France, Britain, and Germany stand behind Zelensky. So I think that's good news. I think battle lines are being drawn, and at the moment the US is on the wrong side. The US appears to be, the Trump administration appears to be aligned with Putin and with Russia.
I would say they have reverted to being, because they have been at various points, to a greater and lesser extent aligned with Putin. That's never really gone away, but they are defaulting or snapping back to that. Expect
even more forcefully.
Yeah, expect more brain dribble and brain incontinence from Trump. That's what's coming up.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for allowing this co-stream and hosting it. I appreciate you doing so. Sorry you didn't get to see Greg Terry. We will message him and say that we are bitterly disappointed, and he's on essentially a yellow card here. Next time it'll be a red card, and we will ban him from YouTube. I'm sorry, it's just that's what will happen. But anyway, thank you all in the live chat. Thank you, and I haven't got a chance.
He's got a really big audience, so he won't do that. Yeah,
he's leaped from. I remember when he had like 1,000, I had like 30,000, and he's now got, I don't know, a gazillion, and I've got 50,000. I'm
same
not
with
everyone's
that Gerdes bloke. Same with that Kaylin Robertson bloke. They were like, "How do you do it? How'd you do it?" And now look at them.
I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. Or YouTube hates me. Probably both. So I just want to say thank you to those who have supported me here and the channel. So this is Jonathan Fink's one. So I haven't been in control of the comments and whatnot, but thank you to Johnny Nevregard, Julian Rossiter, RAP Manny from the Stone Roses, and thank you very much to Zeb Carter as well. Those three for really supporting the channel. Really appreciate it.
And BMA, who always does the most incredible, sterling job at policing the not just policing the comments, but popping up links and making sure everyone knows where to get to the channels, and fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, he's the ledge. Excellent. So please hit the like, subscribe, and share buttons, or that you know what I mean. Do YouTube things, help us out, and thanks.
Until the next time. There we go.
Toodle pips.